Varroa mites feed upon the hemolymph and fat tissue of the bee. The hemolymph is equivalent to blood.
Right.
And by feeding upon the hemolymph and fat tissue, they debilitate the bee. They consume proteins from these organs, and the bee, when emerges from a cell, weighs less, has less protein in their bloodstream, let's call it in mammal terms, but
Right.
really there's no bloodstream, we call it hemolymph.
Right.
And what happens is that that debilitation of the bee ends up in shortening the lifespan of the insect by 50% or more.
Right.
And it's a
That's
pretty
a big difference, 50%
It is.
lifespan, yeah. What other effects does it have other than just physically draining the bees? What other effects does it have on bees?
Varroa mites, it's important to say that come from Asia. The Western honeybee is not the original host of
Right.
the mite,
Right.
but Apis cerana, a cousin of the honeybee.
Right.
And therefore, because this mite has been in contact with the Western honeybee for a relatively short period of time, has caused so much damage.
So there's no resistance in.
There's not much resistance. There are some traits that confer resistance to the bee, but to a lesser degree than the original host.
How does the original host defend itself from?
The original host defends itself by a series of behaviors which include grooming, that is the removal of the mite from their bodies using their legs and mandibles.
Right.
They also have a shorter developmental period in which the mites are not able to reproduce as much
Right.
on the larvae of these bees.
Right.
And some of these traits are also present in our Western honeybee. But still, the mite is quite damaging. Besides draining hemolymph, besides consuming fat tissue of the bee, it also transmits viruses. And there are about 18 different viruses.
18, wow.
18 different viruses affecting the bees. But the most damaging of them is the so-called deformed wing virus.
Right.
A virus that deforms the wings of the bees, that's why it's called deformed wing virus,
Right.
and shortens also the lifespan of the bee. And together they contribute to cause so much damage to a host bee.
So how do bees respond? How does their immune system deal with both the viral load transmitted by the bees and the loss of body fluids and so on from the varroa mite?
Well, bees, as other insects, rely on innate immunity, a type of generalized immune response that depends on cellular immunity and humoral immunity. Cellular immunity is given by hemocytes.
Right.
Hemocytes are blood cells, equivalent to white cells in mammals.
Right.
These cells engulf and kill microorganisms in the hemolymph of the bee.
Right.
They also seal wounds caused by the mite when it bites the bee.
Like with clotting? and-
It would help clotting.
Right.
But when the mite bites the bee, somehow it inhibits this response, and the wound remains open.
So the fluids can still flow, they can
The
still
fluid-
draw. Right.
It still flows so that the mite keeps on feeding.
Kind of like vampires. Then,
Kind of like vampires.
right? Okay.
That's yeah. And then there's also the humoral immunity,
Right.
which it's based on chemicals that also kill microorganisms,
Right. Huh.
like
It-
the virus, for example.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Right. So what about their social? Bees are such social, have all kinds of social behavior. What social behaviors could lead to suppression of this of mite problems?
Yeah, you made a very good point, Paul. Besides innate immunity, bees have social immunity. And that is given by behavioral mechanisms that help them defend themselves from the mites.
Right.
Two of the most important mechanisms of resistance against the mites that have behavioral basis are grooming behavior and hygienic behavior.
Right.
Grooming behavior, as we said before, for the Asian bee, it's the ability of the bee to remove the mite with their legs and
Right.
with their mandibles. And it could be done by the one individual bee on herself,
Right.
or it could be done by other bees helping each other.
Right.
So that's why we call it social allo-grooming.
Right.
And then we have hygienic behavior. That's the ability of the bee to detect parasitized cells with mites, and they would uncap the cell, remove the larva or the pupa from the cell, and by doing that they break the life cycle of the mite, which is reproducing inside the cell.
Okay.